guys, Brian with Cajun Cardboard coming at you from the great state of Louisiana. It is Monday, October 10th, 2022. I have a confession to make. The topic of this video is question and answer, and to be honest with you, it was kind of a selfishly motivated deal. I put a post on Instagram soliciting questions about the hobby. Anything and everything is on the table, and I got a bunch of different questions. We're going to do a screen share, and I'm just going to take you through my post in the comments. There are some fantastic questions in here, but I say it was a selfish motive because honestly, I just needed a topic and I wanted to talk about cards. And so essentially I just threw that giant cast net out there, and some really great collectors and some really thoughtful questions came through. I put absolutely no thought into this. I literally just pulled it up on Instagram. We're going to go through it one question at a time. I have two things pulled up because I wasn't sure what the question asker was asking and I didn't have an answer. Again, this is not teacher and student talking here. I am getting an education every time I do one of these videos, and some of these questions led me to do some further research to find out more about the topic of the questions that was asked. So this is just a give and take. Let me know in the comments if I got anything wrong. Let me know in the comments your answers to some of these questions. Again, I'm always just going to give you my answer from my perspective. If it ever affects or influences a particular card or a holding that I have of a certain player or product, I'll always try to be transparent if the thought comes to mind. But again, this is not like a hype train pump and dump thing. And literally, I just solicited random questions from random people, but some really big time collectors and some great hobby, even content creators chimed in with some really cool questions. So let's switch over and let's get cranking. I'm going to try to do one of these maybe every couple weeks, maybe once every 2 weeks, something like that. Squeeze it into the calendar. Guys, just a reminder, I'm on the Luka Nation Network and I'm on Cajun Cardboard. Make sure you follow both. Make sure you hit the bell icon for both. Do me a huge favor. If you haven't subscribed to the Luka Nation Network, you're missing about 4 videos from me every week. So if you like this video and you like some of the stuff that I put out there, please go do me a favor and go subscribe to the Luka Nation Network, because you're missing out on 4 really high quality videos a week. A couple of them are on the schedule every Monday and Friday. If you like to follow the PWCC Weekly Auctions on Monday, that's where you'll find my recaps of the top 100. And if you like Michael Jordan cards, it's an absolute must subscribe to the Luka Nation Network, because every Friday I feature a new Michael Jordan card in Explore the Card. All right, no more wasting time. I've got some questions pulled up, so I just literally posted a picture of my logo and said, hey, drop me some questions and answers. First question comes from Adam, the real guy. If you could give 2018 Brian any advice, what would it be? I jokingly responded to Adam, look, this could be an entire hour-long episode. I am assuming I'm not allowed to say, hey, you know, bet on Tom Brady to get traded to the Bucks and win the Super Bowl. Otherwise, I'd be a quadrillionaire. I'm also assuming it doesn't mean I know what happened in the card market and I can go back and just buy whatever card has increased the most by searching the card ladder index. So I'm assuming he means, yeah, what have I learned over the last 3 or 4 years? And so two things well, one thing, I'll just stick to one thing. I bought the hell out of Anthony Simons in 2018. I went all in. I bought about 2,500 of his rookie cards. The one lesson I've learned is I got the player right. And oftentimes I got the product right, because I bought a hellacious percentage of those 2,500 cards were Prism. But what I didn't do is I didn't focus on fewer cards, higher end cards, and lesson learned, right? So I had hundreds of silver prisms, tons of orange prisms, high end orange prisms. I did buy a couple RPAs. I did buy a bunch of one-of-ones, but instead of buying, 2,000 plus, rookie cards, many of which were base or optic hollow or silver or green or red, white, and blue or ruby wave, and stuff like that. Instead of just buying thousands of those, honestly, I should have just taken the exact same amount of money and just kind of nutted up and sacked it up and bought a bunch of National Treasure RPAs, gold serial numbered to 10s, optic golds, select golds, prism golds, RPAs, from Flawless, Immaculate, National Treasures, things like that. Logo Man. I should have just taken all the money and done that. I was too fixated on buying silvers for no exaggeration, $5. And so, in hindsight, it's turned out to be a great investment. But the one thing I've learned is quality over quantity, primarily because the margins are bigger on higher end cards. Oftentimes, the dollar volume profit is bigger. Maybe not the percentage, but the dollar volume profit is bigger, and it's easier to exit, right? And so I've started trying to. I have liquidated, a very large tens of thousands of dollars of Anthony Simons cards and tens of thousands of dollars of profit, but it's a pain in the ass because I've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of slabs, whereas if I'd have just spent the same money on high-end stuff, I would be able to get in and out much quicker, much more efficient. One thing I've learned, Adam, to answer your question, and I'm sure you would agree because you're not the youngest dude in the world either, is that time is money, and when you got a wife and kids and family and jobs and businesses, and you're trying to spit out a bunch of content and you're having fun talking, shipping and all that crap on eBay takes time. And so I would much rather have the same dollar value invested, but fewer cards, but higher end cards, because it's just easier to get in and out. Next question, how significant are autos from a player's playing days compared to ones after they have retired? I thought a little bit about this question, and I think the dilemma here is if you're talking about, let's say, Bird and Magic and, anybody older than those guys. Well, they didn't have any playing day cards, right? Other than, in-person PSA DNA type stuff. You'd have to get the card autographed by them in person. They didn't have any pack-pulled autograph cards, at least, maybe later. I know Magic did, like in the early 90s, and Bird did in the early 90s, but you know what I mean. I mean, like starting rookie year and going back, like Kareem and Doc and Moses Malone and Gervin and Wilt and Bill and all those guys. They didn't have pack-pulled autos necessarily. Towards the 90s, they did have some Magic and Bird and Doc and those guys. But really, Jordan is kind of where that started, where you could finally pull autograph cards from packs. I don't know if Skybox Autographics was the first appearance of autographs. Somebody would have to correct me on that. I think Upper Deck had some before Skybox Autographics came out for sure. I got to believe. Again, whenever I don't know something, I'm going to tell you I don't know, and I am not an autograph collector. I do have autograph cards in my collection, fellas, but I'm not an autograph collector. I'm not an origin of autographs. So you throw out those old guys, and then, the issue with, LeBron and playing day autographs is he's played forever, and so all of LeBron's cards are autographed. I guess really Kobe would be probably the best example of, playing day autos existed during, from Kobe's rookie year all the way through his prime, all the way through the end of his career. And then now, you'll see a few more Kobe cards. Of course, he's passed away, so he might not be the greatest example either, because you can't add more autographs to his, print supply, production number. So I don't know. That's a great question. This is a deal where I'm going to solicit comments from the viewers and let me know what you think. For Jordan stuff, I gotta believe, again, I don't even collect Jordan autos, and I'm a huge Jordan collector, but I gotta believe that, even Jordan playing day autos would be worth more than current autos. Of course, then you throw in issues with what product's it from, is there a serial number on it, is there a patch attached to it? There's just there's a myriad of factors that factor into whether a card's valuable or not. But playing day auto versus non-playing day auto is definitely an important factor to consider. Just like, a 2000, a post-retirement Larry Bird or Magic Johnson card rarely is going to achieve the same value as, a playing day card, that's from a similar type product. Obviously the Exquisite throws a wrench in all that stuff because that's such a high-end product that sure, you can go find, five-figure, maybe, I don't know, probably high five-figure Bird and Magic and Dr. J cards and Exquisite after their playing days were long over. And it's just different for each player because, the cards that Magic and Bird had during their playing years were so boring in comparison to Exquisite and National Treasures and some of the really cool stuff, even 2012 Prism Gold stuff. It's just different. It's a tough comparison. So that's a great question, two-way players. I'm not the best person to answer that question, but well thought out. And hopefully we can get some comments addressing that question from some really astute veteran autograph collectors who understand that market a lot better than I do. Here's one, 2003 Topps. Why is the collection card valued less when the pop count is so much lower? So at first I thought he was talking about Topps Contemporary Collection, which is a product that I really love. But then I started thinking, oh wait, there's that collection variation. So I've got over here, guys, Card Ladder pulled up. He's talking about this card, right? Which may not be familiar to a lot of you guys. I had to refresh my memory on this card. I am familiar with obviously the 2003 Topps base card, right? So here's the base card. This is the regular old Topps LeBron paper base card, 2,208 population in PSA 10. That's a $2,188 card. Obviously, it had gotten much higher during the run. This is the first edition, which I'm familiar with. I own a PSA 10 copy of this card. Same card, only it's stamped up here in the top left with silver foil, first edition. Those are very rare, 120 pop only. The question asker, who was No Trick Pony Cards, who's a really big Lillard collector and, has become a good Instagram friend of mine because we both collect Lillard. The question he's asking is about this card right here, which is essentially it's a photo variation. It's called Collection. I don't know much more about it other than it's a photo variation. It's also from Topps. I don't know if it was pulled from different types of packs. Again, like if I don't know something, I'm just going to say I don't know. But it's a Pop 167, so not much different than the first edition, but they're only $1,700 in comparison to the first edition, which is a similar pop that is $8,400 and has been as high as $10,000, which is what I paid for mine. Let the cat out of the bag on that. So I don't have a great answer for you, No Trick Pony. You might be onto something. There is an answer from 801 Card Gems, and it says just wait on it. Basically, LeBron, Melo, and Wade were the three big ones. It's maybe just hasn't had time to ripen and come to fruition. Although we are 20 years out, 801 Card Gems. So I don't know. Maybe at some point it will click and people will look back and start collecting the various types of parallels and various types of LeBron rookies that are out there. Obviously, he's a pretty big collector base right now, but it might be even bigger one day in the near future, depending on how LeBron finishes his career. Grail Card Quest, another great collector. We see comments from Grail Card Quest all the time. His name is Brandon. Why don't people buy more SGC and CSG 10s at a big discount from PSA 10? Where do you see that going long term? I think the answer is that's a question, but that's a statement. They are. I mean, the CSG 10 and the SGC 10 doesn't sell for the same as the PSA 10. They are buying those cards at a big discount. I think the real question is, are they buying those cards and hoping to crack them and resubmit them to PSA or BGS? Or are there more and more SGC and CSG collectors out there that are becoming more comfortable with their ultra modern and modern cards in those slabs? I don't know the answer to that. I also don't know the answer to how many of these grading companies are going to be here 10 years from now. SGC's been around. SGC has a very established, respected customer base in the vintage market, of course. CSG is a kind of an offshoot of CGC, which is really big, in graded comic books and things like that. I find that CSG, and this is me guessing again, I try not to guess, but I think I can safely say CSG or CGC or whatever it's called for the trading card game stuff, the Pokemon, the Magic, the Dragon Ball Z, all that stuff, Magic. I think that's a little bit bigger grading company for those types of cards based on the output of the data that I see from GemRate and some of these other sites. So I don't know where that's going forward. I know that PSA just dropped its price again from 22 to 18. Will they get back to 15 to 12? I don't know. If they do, as a set collector, I'd be thrilled, right? Because I love, even though I've been getting punched in the nether region, as I like to say on this channel, to try to keep it sort of clean, punched in the nuggets, kicked in the nuggets by PSA lately. I do like throwing a whole bunch of cards up against the wall and seeing what sticks, and whether I win the lottery with PSA and get somebody who had a really good day that day or the night before, hint, and get some PSA 10s, or whether I come back with a 3% gem rate, which is what's been happening lately. So you never know. It's a mixed bag with PSA right now, but it's a mixed bag with SGC and BGS as well, man. It just depends. Grading is subjective. It is what it is. Tag is an interesting entrant into the grading market. Let's see where that company goes. I'm very intrigued by Tag based on what I've seen, some of the samples I've seen, the slabs, the data, the information that you get when you submit a card to be graded by Tag. I'm really impressed by them so far, so let's see where that goes. But to answer your question, I think people are buying SGC 10s and CSG 10s for ultra modern and modern stuff at a discount. What they do with it, I don't know. Maybe they're long-term investors, as you are potentially alleging, that let's buy it now at a discount. Maybe 7 years from now, CSG and SGC are right there with PSA as far as value goes. Who knows? I don't know where that secondary market's going to go. From what I've seen, I don't think that gap between PSA 10 and BGS, CSG, or SGC, Gem Mint, commensurate grades, comparable grades, I don't think that gap's closing. I think it's getting nuts. And I think that the disparity between PSA 10s and PSA 9s is even growing. And I think part of the reason is population explosion. People are finding that is the only way to avoid the overpopulation of a particular card is to only seek it in PSA 10. That's kind of, I think that's the reason that gap seems to be broadening. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. The next is a question from one of the true GOATs, right? Michael Caddick, one of the greatest Jordan collectors in the world. I can safely say that because I've seen some of his stuff. Even when you scroll over his name here, you just see there's $1 million right on your screen. So we're talking about one of the greatest Jordan collectors ever. He and I have been going at it lately in a Jordan group chat. We don't always see eye to eye, but good Lord, is there anybody in the hobby that I respect more than Michael? MK Sports Cards. If you're not following him on Instagram, do yourself a favor and do it. He's got some amazing cards in his collection, not just Jordans, but LeBron as well, and just some other great, he's just an all-around phenomenal collector. His question says, LeBron has many, many, many more cards than MJ. He's also a more polarizing athlete. That is true. How does this impact their relative card values long term? Well, I don't think it helps. Obviously, if you alienate any faction of society, you are depressing the amount of demand for your card. I think that's probably a rhetorical question because Michael is a very intelligent person who's got a pretty good perspective of the general macro look at the hobby. So I think he's kind of leading me down that path. I agree with you. LeBron is more polarizing than Jordan, who, is famous for his, statement, Republicans buy sneakers too, when he was asked to back a certain extremely democratic political candidate, and he refused to do so because, green meant more to him than Democrat or Republican did. And so, at 5, 10, or 20 years, for example, I have my own thoughts, which I know where he's going with this. Jordan over everything, which I have no problem with. You hear me say all paths lead to Jordan all the time. I am a big LeBron collector. I am a huge fan of LeBron on the court. I do think he's a little loose with his opinions without necessarily doing the research to educate himself. But I do appreciate anybody who uses their platform to speak from the heart and support what they do care about, even when I don't necessarily agree with every single thing that person's saying. I mean, very rarely do we run across people on this earth where we agree with everything that they have to say, especially celebrities, politicians, or athletes, famous athletes. So rarely are your interests going to be perfectly aligned with theirs. So I don't think it helps that LeBron is so loose and with his opinions from a political perspective. I don't think it's great for his cards, but he's a human being just like I am. And just like I can click record on this video and give you my opinions and answers to these questions, he can do it with, a few bazillion more people listening. And so anything LeBron says is just amplified beyond belief. He's been under a microscope ever since his sophomore year at St. Vincent St. Mary's, when he destroyed Lenny Cook. From that day forward, his life would never be the same. And it's I gotta believe it's he has 100 zillion million. Well, he's a billionaire, but I gotta believe it's tough to live that kind of life under that much scrutiny. Now he has his own thoughts. He'd love to hear mine. Those are my thoughts, MK. I still collect LeBron. I still think he's the second most collectible player. I love that his cards span from the Topps Chrome era all the way in Exquisite era, which unfortunately I don't have any, but all the way through what looks like is going to be the end of the Panini era into Fanatics. Let's see if he'll probably be the only guy who spanned all three during his playing years. That's pretty impressive in and of itself. LeBron's been playing for 2 decades, and he led the league in scoring last year, even though technically he didn't qualify for the points per game league because he didn't play enough games. Iowa Dave asks, thanks to LeBron's chase of the points title, do you think this is the year Kareem finally gets hobby love? I don't. I think his name's going to be brought up a lot. Also, do you think the enormity of Kareem's Topps rookie card hurts? I think he means the prodigious size of the card, right? It's a tall boy, or as they call in the hobby, 1969 Topps. Do I think that hurts the desirability since the slabs are so big they don't fit into most cases? I don't know about question number 2. I'm not sure. I often wonder the same question. The same question can be asked about the Jordan Star 5x7s, right? And the Jordan 1985 Nike promo card. I like that. I keep my cards in the PWCC vault, so I don't give a damn how big they are, right? I collect Beckett magazines. Those are humongous. A lot of people in the world collect sneakers. How many of those can you actually put in your house, right? And so I don't think the size of the Kareem card affects the collectability of it. I think it affects the ability to grade it in a high grade, because the more surface area you have and the harder it is to store, like you suggest, which is accurate, I think it would be that much harder to keep the card in gem mint or even, very good condition. So I think that affects that. As for whether or not Kareem gets this boost and is off to the races, remember, it's his record that's getting passed. And so while his name will be mentioned a lot, Kareem played a relatively, from the middle of his career until the end, a relatively boring brand of basketball. He dominated the game in the worst era of basketball ever, which was the 70s. It is, I don't care what anybody says, that was the worst era of basketball because the talent was split between the ABA and the NBA, and the star power just wasn't there. If you said, who are the greatest players in the 70s? After you get past Kareem, Moses, Gervin, and Dr. J, it's really devoid of legendary type players. Go look at the top 15 players of all time. How many of those players were in their prime in the 70s? Ask yourself that question. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I think it's just Kareem. I don't have Doc in my top 15 players of all time. I don't have Gervin in there. Dan Issel was, Doc was in the ABA, so we didn't get to see him on TV. 70s is just kind of weak and watered down. So Kareem dominated and did everything he could. You can only play the schedule they put before you, so he can only crush the opponents that he had the opportunity to play. He can't go out there and dominate Wilt and Bill Russell because they weren't around, for Kareem's prime. But another part of the problem is Kareem was, for lack of a better word, an a-hole, man. He was very rude. He was very standoffish. Even his teammates didn't really get along with him until later in his career. And I think Magic kind of got his clutches and his claws into Kareem and made him a little bit more identifiable and a little more upbeat, right? And a little better teammate. And I think Kareem learned a lot from playing those years with Magic. But before that, Kareem was a very bitter human being who harbored a great deal of resentment. And I say that with great respect because he is an extremely intelligent person, but he still got some of that polarizing stuff that that MK just asked about LeBron. Kareem still says things that are like, get off my lawn, grumpy old man stuff, talking about LeBron, talking about Kyrie, talking about all these people. He's got an opinion on everything. And he's just really a kind of a negative dude. I think that affects him more than anything. And then the other thing is big men just aren't as collectible. I don't know how many ways to say it. And I say that as a Shaquille O'Neal collector. I shouldn't say they're not as collectible. They're not, their value, it doesn't reflect their accomplishments the same way that a very exciting guard like a Kobe Bryant or a Jordan or LeBron or even a Magic does, right? That's just a fact. I don't care what anybody says. Are Wilt and Bill Russell and Kareem cards worth a hell of a lot? Of course they are. But again, that era was also different. So that's my answer to that question. Simon466 Cards, one of the smartest people in the hobby. Every time I read one of his Instagram posts, I feel a little bit dumber than I already am. Simon asks, assuming Fanatics buys Panini and or their brands, they will likely produce both Prism and Topps Chrome. I know where this is going. What do you think the hobby would consider flagship in 5 years? My belief is flagship remains Prism, while Topps Chrome is hobby only and becomes what Select was pre-2020 before Panini, yes, destroyed the brand by overprinting. Yes, they destroyed the brand. I agree. Panini definitely, hopefully learned their lesson, and hopefully Fanatics can learn that lesson. Select was making a run and becoming very relevant, and then they just overprinted it. 57 colors, Jolly Ranchers, Tigers, Zebras, 57 parallels of courtside, every wave courtside you could imagine color. I don't know the answer to this question, Simon. This is the seminal question, right? This is the question everybody wants to know. What's it going to be like? What if we have, at one point, National Treasures, Exquisite, Skybox Premium, Metal Universe, Topps Chrome, Prism, Optic, Flawless, Immaculate? That's the great question, right? We all want to know what happens after all these licenses have fallen into place and Fanatics has access to what they have access to. How are they going to make these decisions? The one thing that that concerns me is that hopefully Fanatics is a master marketing company, right? I'm not an expert in Fanatics, but I know this. They know how to sell shit and stuff, and if they do, and they are true to their word, and they think this hobby is going to have 10x the number of participants that it does today, maybe 5 years from now, then you may not have to choose between Prism and Topps Chrome. They both could be killers. Sorry, that's my phone going off. I forgot to silence it. That's what a amateur hack job I am here. Assuming Fanatics buys Panini, I don't know, Simon. That's a great question. That's another entire video. I've kind of talked about that a little bit, about what I hope Fanatics does differently. So moving on to the next question. V-Guy TRD, is the hobby losing its prestige due to being invaded by big corporations with big money? Wall Street investors and brokers, influencers, marketing tactics, scams, to grade or not to grade. Can the traditional collector survive all this cancer that has attached itself to card grading? I think yes, because the one beautiful thing about this hobby is that you can always collect in your lane. You don't ever have to be told how to collect. And just because the hobby may sway from collecting this type of way to this type of way, I mean, we saw, most people were just collectors. And then we saw this influx of sneaker guys and Beanie Baby people and Gary V disciples turned it into an investor flipper first, collector second type atmosphere. Now we're seeing it swing a little bit back as the money's just not coming quite as easily for those investors and flippers and breakers. And so nobody can ever tell you how to collect. The one thing I do know is if you let's say collect cards, baseball cards from the 80s randomly, or basketball cards from the 90s, and you don't give a damn about grading, right? Michael Caddick is a great example who just asked a question. You don't give a damn about grades. No one can make you grade your cards. You can always fall back on collecting the way that you fell in love with this hobby, which is the way I fell in love with it, was a 3-ring binder, a 3x3 plastic sheet, with cards in each one, and sometimes 2 cards, one facing each direction, right? Because I didn't want to pay for more plastic sheets. Nobody's ever going to be able to tell you how to collect. And that's one of the beautiful things about this hobby. And it's just like artwork. Nobody can tell you what art you like. You can pick and choose whatever art you like, and no matter what public opinion does or how much, the majority sways from one direction to another on a given topic or a given brand or a given player, you don't have to follow that, right? You can blaze your own trail. That's one beautiful thing about this hobby, and that's why I'm not worried. I'm collecting Michael Jordan cards. I don't care if people do or don't like Michael Jordan 12 years from now. I like him because he mattered so much to me when I was alive in the 80s and 90s. So I'm going to collect what I love. I'm collecting Damian Lillard, for God's sakes. That's certainly not the direction that the hobby's going. And I can't tell you how many messages I've gotten saying, why are you doing that? That's dumb. His cards are going to be worth less 10 years from now than they are today. He's never going to win a ring. I know, I don't care. I'm collecting him because I like him on and off the court. And I love the fact that he drinks Modelo beer. No, I'm just kidding. I love Lillard. I love collecting his cards. I like what he stands for. So I've always been a little outside the box and kind of blaze my own trail. I never try to fall in line with anybody else. Regarding any old BGS 9.5 or PSA 10 of the Kobe Chrome rookie with some greening, is that still considered a gem mint? Yeah, I think technically it's a gem mint. Once it's in the gem mint slab, BGS 9.5, SGC 10, PSA 10, it's gem mint. But that's really not the question you want to ask, GOAT Cards. The question is, will it yield the same value as a PSA 9 with absolutely impeccable, perfect color? And I don't know the answer to that question. I know that the quantity of greening on 96 Topps Chrome is the prime directive. That is the prime distinguishing factor. And the same can be said for 93 finest refractors for the Jordan and the Penny rookie, and some cards from that 93 finest set. Those also have a tendency to go very green and Hulk. I know what you're getting at, but really the question to ask is, would you rather a perfectly colorful PSA 9, or would you rather a perfectly colorful BGS 9, or would you rather a greened out PSA 10? And I can only speak for myself, and I think I probably share the opinion of most people in the hobby. I'd rather the colorful one that's PSA 9 and hasn't turned green, because those cards do turn green after they've been put into slabs. Contrary to what anybody out there says, don't ever listen to anybody tell you, well, it's only exposure to light, and if it's in a slab, it'll never turn green. That's not true. It's happened. I'm positive it's happened. I've seen it happen. It happened to me. It's happened to friends of mine. It's happened to collectors that have been doing this decades longer than I have. But I'm always going with the most colorful copy. The green PSA 10 is going to sell for a hellacious amount less than the colorful PSA 10, if that's your question. Definitely that's the answer, because we saw, go back and go to Card Ladder, go to sales history, or go to the Card Ladder page, and in the database, search 1993 finest refractor Jordan PSA 10, and you'll see that sucker going up and down, very volatile. And the primary reason for that is not centering or corners or edges, it's the greening and the clarity of the color. Adam the Real Guy's not done. He wants some more of me. He says, how do you balance your card love with work and family obligations? The answer is I choose to do this and talk to you on the camera instead of sleeping, and then I do my phone stuff during downtime. I try not to, I'm not perfect, but I try not to let it interfere with being a father of 7 kids. Yes, 7 kids. Yes, all the same women. No, there's no twins. Yes, we're Catholic. That's a lot of kids. I get all that. That's the answer to all the questions everybody wants to ask. Yes, I drove a very mysterious 15-passenger van, but those days are over because I've got 4 kids that can drive now, so I can drive a normal vehicle like other people. I don't have a big navy blue van with no windows and no hubcaps like I used to. Yes, I'm that dude, right? I hung up my street cred when I moved in that direction, but now I'm back and I've got a normal car like everybody else, and so does my wife. But we do miss that van because it brings back great memories. So to answer your question, man, look, you're doing the same thing as I know you have a wife and kids, Adam as well, and you seem to be a great father and husband as well. That's always got to take priority. I'm not here. I don't have all the answers. I'm not the guidebook on fatherhood or husbandry. But I know those are the 8 most important people in my entire life, and they will always take priority, even over a PMG red Jordan or a PMG green Jordan for that matter, if God willing I ever stumble into ownership of one of those. But to answer your question, I have a really massive spreadsheet which I disseminate to my family and my extended family to help get my kids to and from their sporting events. A bunch of them play travel sports. A bunch of them have, school obligations and whatnot. And then since I've got so many kids, they're actually 4 of them are old enough to babysit the other kids now. And so my wife and I can go out and have dates and husband-wife, dates anytime we want to. Whereas that was not the case when we had 7 kids, all under the age of 14 or whatever. But life's good right now, man. I'm really enjoying it. And to answer your question, the time that I get to do what I'm doing right now usually is, somewhere between 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. before my actual workday starts, because believe it or not, I'm not full-time in the hobby. Even though I spend a full amount of time in the hobby, I'm not full-time. I'm a real estate attorney, and I've got to run a couple businesses here. So I basically choose content creation over sleep. And that's something that Andrew Goldberg with the Luka Nation Network is quickly understanding. I'm texting him even before he awakes, and he's a pretty serious go-getter as well. So question number 3 from Adam. He gets 3 questions for the price of 1. If you got offered the number 1 card on your want list straight up for your best 30 cards, would you do it? This is simple math, and I'm from Louisiana, but this math is easy. My 30 best cards don't add up to $3 million. So yes, I would take a PMG green slabbed Nat Turner. If you're listening, I would take a green PMG slabbed in a PSA holder, and you can have my 30 best cards. But would it hurt? Yeah, I can't imagine selling any of my top 30. But it's possible. I did sell some of my top 30 in this past year, but to answer your question, this is simple math, and this is an investor answer, not a collector answer. Yeah, I'd take it, because then I could always sell the PMG green, get my 30 cards back, or maybe 27 of them I could go find, and then have a lot of money left over. So give me the PMG green. Spoiler alert, my top 30 cards are not worth $3.5 million or whatever the hell the PMG green would be worth. We don't know. I guess maybe we'll see one in the next couple of years, but we haven't seen one in a good bit. Kevin Forster 16 asks, I think anything related to best investments prospects to watch will be a great listen. We're always looking for that shiny new toy. That's true. Stay tuned to the channel, Kevin. I do investor prospecting type videos all the time. I can't shake the habit. As much as I don't want to buy overprinted, ultra modern stuff, I end up doing it. I've already got a list of like 7 or 8 dudes from the last rookie class and from this, 2022 rookie class that I want to invest in. So I've dabbled in it, just not quite at the same rate because it's just different. Cards are overprinted so much now. It just really did kind of spoil the hobby for me and spoil the prospecting side of things. You just got to be able to adapt and be able to modify what products you purchase for these players, and then just hope for the best, and maybe even shorten your window of hold. Like I used to think, well, I'm gonna buy a card and sell it 20 years later. Those days are kind of over unless it's Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James. Very, very short print, 90s stuff, maybe vintage stuff. Most of this ultra modern stuff, I'd be very careful holding that stuff for a very long term. And I'm talking about even some of the great ones, Doncic, Zion, Ja, Trey, all those guys. These cards are at pretty preposterous price points, and there's a lot of options to choose from for those guys. I think the supply is I think it's a lot bigger than people realize. And even though the players are awesome and some of them transcendent, Doncic, for example, I just worry there's so many of his cards out there, potential options to purchase if you wanted a Doncic rookie card. Slabtown Cards asks, and he's got a picture of the 101 star Jordan as his avatar here. Todd from Slabtown Cards asks, which basketball product being released now do you think will stand the test of time and be sought after 20 plus years from now based on design and format of base, parallels, inserts, etc., not simply based on which rookie cards are in the product? To answer your question, I think Prism's around forever. The same way Topps Chrome's around forever, the same way that Topps Finest is around forever. So I don't think Prism's going anywhere. I think people are now back to Optic Holo over Select because of Panini overprinting Select, as we mentioned a few minutes ago. But I think Prism's here to stay. I think that National Treasures is here to stay. And this is assuming even if Fanatics comes in and kills it, right? Even if Fanatics comes in and says, all right, that's it. That's what happened with Topps Chrome. That's what happened with Topps Finest. And people like me still collect the heck out of those two products. So even if Panini Prism's lifespan is about to end, I don't think that Panini Prism cards are going to go down in value. I think they're going to endure forever just because they represent an era. They represent the Panini era, probably better than any other product. This Chromium era of Panini is, Prism is the be-all, end-all, in my opinion. So I think they're good. I think I like Immaculate. I love Immaculate. I think that's around to stay. I don't like Flawless as much, but I know most people like Flawless more than Immaculate. And then National Treasures is obviously a big deal too. I'm probably not the best person to ask this question to, but if I had to pick 3, I'd probably say National Treasures, Prism, and then Immaculate. Those are the 3 that I think look the best, that I think will last the longest. What is the impact for the hoops market when Topps Chrome comes back, whenever that may be? Great question, Maze 1 Blue. I'm assuming that's a Michigan fan, JG. I don't know. That's a great question. If and when Topps Chrome comes back, you're going to have 2 very similar cards that I think are going to be loved by people. I think a lot of Topps Chrome success is going to hinge on whether Fanatics makes the very ballsy decision to limit the number of parallels. Can you imagine if Topps Chrome comes back and it's aesthetically pleasing and there's like, let's say 5 parallels. Let's say there's gold. Let's say there's X-Fractor. Let's say there's black. Let's say there's white. And let's say there's just regular. And that's it. And that's all they have. I think that would be incredibly well received. More is not better. If there's one thing we've learned from the past 5 years, more parallels is not better. It might make Panini more money, but it is not better for us as collectors. Digestibility, understanding the products, just being able to identify and name the parallels is important. No one, I don't think, can name off the top of their head the parallels in 2021 Prism. It's just preposterous. And so I think limiting the number of parallels will mean will have a lot of say in dictating how Topps Chrome does when, in fact, it does come back. And hopefully it will, God willing, because I love that product, as you know. What are your thoughts on Panini Instant? I didn't know anything about it, so I pulled it up. Panini Instant, I always just kind of ignored it because I thought it was a digital card, but apparently it's not. So Panini Instant, when an event happens, Panini creates a card and they list it in their online store. The card's available for 24 hours and the print run is limited to those that are ordered. That's it in a nutshell. Print runs are actually listed on the cards, and then they print them and disseminate them to everybody who ordered a card. And so traditional cards usually focus on an entire season. Panini Instant cards are different because of their immediacy, and they tell a story about a particular event that happened very recently. In some instances, blah, 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 parallels and upgrades. You know, there's a bunch of different upgrades. There's a bunch of different sets. Apparently, Panini Instant is something happens and they make a card about that particular event. That's about the gist of it. I don't know anything about it. I'm completely ignorant. My thoughts are, after reading that, it's a pretty cool idea. I don't know if it's going to take off because I'm assuming they're licensed, obviously, because it's by Panini and they have the NBA license. But, you know, I don't know. I always just saw Panini Instant, and I just thought it was like a digital card, but you could like redeem it for a paper version. I haven't seen the value of those cards or done any research, so I don't know. But thanks for asking that question. It's something I'd like to educate myself on and learn a little bit more about. What Mick Wildcat asks, does a PSA 10 have 4 times the eye appeal of a PSA 9? That's what the price difference suggests. Don't we assign too much value to a somewhat subjective determination by a grader? The answer to that question is no, it doesn't have 4 times the eye appeal, in my opinion. And yes, we assign way too damn much value to PSA 10, but that's the game, and that's the game we're playing, and that's the game we all live in. And so you got to pick and choose PSA 9s or PSA 10s. And I think you undershot it. I think a lot of PSA 10s have 6 to 7 times the value of PSA 9s. And yes, you hit the nail on the head, and you should have capitalized subjective, all caps. Grading is subjective with PSA right now. I don't care what kind of technology they have in place. I know Tag does their thing. We'll see how that shakes out. And I know PSA has invested a great deal in certain types of technology that can detect certain types of flaws. But I am telling you right now, because I've cracked and resub PSA cards to PSA, and based on my experience, they are very subjective, and it just depends on the grader you get on a particular day, especially for low-end cards. But to answer your question, I wish there was not a 6, 7, 8, 12 times disparity between PSA 10s and PSA 9s or PSA 10s and BGS 9.5s, but that's the way it is. That's the game we're playing. So you got to choose. If you believe that PSA 9s it will win the day in the long run, go buy 4 or 6 or 12 PSA 9s instead of buying the PSA 10s. Can you give a breakdown of where you buy and or sell most of your cards? eBay, card shows, PWCC, social media platforms, other internet platforms. Well, let me start with this. I've been to one card show in my life. It was the National in Atlantic City, and I think I bought 5 cards. So card shows represent 1% of 1% of 1% of the cards that I've bought in my entire hobby career, okay? So that's probably an unusual answer. I'm not the best person to speak on buying things at card shows. I'm just learning that process, and I hope to go to Dallas in November, visit some good friends of mine who just moved to Dallas. You know who you are. Maybe go catch a Mavs game and maybe buy some cool cards at the card show as well. eBay used to be 97% of the cards that I would buy in the hobby, maybe 24 months ago. That has changed to where eBay is maybe 10% of the cards I buy, and maybe it's 1% of the value of the cards I buy. I have sort of gravitated, this is just me in my opinion, based on the way that I collect, I have gravitated to where about 85 to 90% of the cards that I buy are on PWCC. I will occasionally buy off of Golden if it's a card that I don't see every now and then and I need to get the card. I'll move over to Golden, and I've had great experience buying on Golden auctions. IG or Facebook is always a great opportunity and should be the platform of first choice because buyers and sellers don't have to pay any fees or state sales taxes or any of that stuff. So if you can vet the seller on IG or Facebook or TikTok or MySlabs or whatever, those fees are very low. So I would always start there. But me personally, I'm probably 85% PWCC. I'm probably 5% IG or Facebook. I'm probably 1% Golden, and I'm probably 5 or 6% on eBay. The only cards I'm buying on eBay, it really has to mean something to me to be in a slab on eBay, or I still play that buy raw grade flip game, even though I'm getting, decapitated by PSA recently. I still play the game. They say insanity is doing everything the same way over and over and expecting a different result. I must be insane because I am still buying raw, grading with PSA, and then flipping. It still sometimes works out okay, and I'll have a video coming up soon where I had a PSA 9 orange Anthony Simons rookie. It was a looked like a 10 to me. I cracked it. I resubmitted it to PSA. It came back a 10. It's a $2,000 card, just like that. So sometimes the game works. Sometimes the game doesn't. Most of the time it doesn't. But when it works and it works on a big card, there is huge margin potential there. So I keep playing the game. And when I do buy those buy raw grade flip cards, those types of cards, like prospecting sometimes, and sometimes it's just 90s cards I buy raw grade flip if they look good. I'm always buying those off of eBay. That's where I buy my cards. A little tiny bit at ComC every once in a while when I get bored. So a little bit ComC, but 85% PWCC for my real cards, my real collection, my PC cards. How does a collector justify buying cards of a player who may have been spectacular on the court, but has done horrific things in their personal life? In other words, is it easy to separate the art from the artist? He's talking about Karl Malone and dudes like that. I'm with you, man. And I heard my great friend, who I'm actually going to be doing a video with later tonight in the twilight hours of the morning, Jake Roy with 90s B-Ball Cards, talk about his opinion of Karl Malone. I share the opinion. Great player, not so great human being. That's why I choose not to collect him. Again, in this hobby, you choose your own path. Jordan wasn't a perfect human being, but there's levels to being a human being, just like there's levels to basketball performance and historical resume. And so we all have to pick and choose. If you're one of those people who can look past what they did off the court and collect just the player that you saw on the court, then kudos to you. That's your way of doing it, but that's not my way of doing it. And like I said earlier, not to keep hyping Dame time, but I collect Damian Lillard because everything that I've read, heard, and seen of his behavior off the court as a father, as a human being, as an entertainer, as a role model to my guy Anthony Simons and other young players coming up through the Trailblazers organization. He seems like a quality dude on and off, and that matters to me, and so therefore I collect him. Again, you got to remember, we know a fraction of what these guys and gals, if you collect WNBA for whatever reason, do off the court. We don't know, so keep that in mind. You may think you know a guy, you don't, right? We're not there. We don't know, so we take what we know, we process it, and we make decisions accordingly. But to answer your question, it affects his value. I mean, go look at Karl Malone's cards, man. He's one of the 5 greatest scorers that ever lived. He's maybe a top 2 or 3 power forward that ever lived, depending on who you ask. But his cards don't do great, and I think that has a lot to do with it. So that's my answer to that question. 801 Card Gems asks, most amount of money you've lost on a card. I don't sell for loss, okay? So let me be very clear. I am that stubborn dude. I will not sell a meaningful card for a loss. Like a noticeable loss. And for instance, the best example, and this is the last question, so let me switch you over because this is funny. The card that comes to mind most recently is the fact that I bought a PMG Red Tim Duncan for like $88,000. The card last sold for like $40-something thousand, I think. I don't know. You can fact check me on that. Something like that. I need to get out of the Tim Duncan card, but I simply refuse. Now, I've got the luxury to hang on to the card because I've got other funds coming in, and I've sold a hellacious quantity of other cards this year. So I've got money coming back into my pool, into my war chest to continue collecting in the hobby and having fun. So I don't have to, and I can play the waiting game. I think that at some point in my life, the Tim Duncan card will go back, and I will probably sell it to break even to some fantastic Spurs collector out there. But I try not to sell big cards for big losses. I just don't. Will that end up losing me more money in the long run? Maybe. But you don't lose on a card unless you sell it. And so right now I'm just going to sit on that card. So that's the first one that comes to mind. Now, if you're asking what's the most amount of money you lost on a card, if you include could have sold it for this, but now still have the card, or sold it for a lower amount, but it was still profitable, the answer to that question is going to be the Jordan PSA 10. So bought my Jordan 86 Fleer PSA 10 for $40,500 in a private sale just before COVID. And we saw the card get up to whatever, 780,000 or whatever. And I did not sell the card. And now I'm sitting on the card staring at it, happy to have it in my collection. And it's like $180,000 to $200,000 card, or $174,000 to $200,000 card, depending on the quality of the card. I like mine. It's a PWCC 30% sticker card. So that's probably the one card I regret not selling. That is a $500,000. So it would have been nice. It would have been nice to sell it for $780,000 and then come back and buy 4 more. But again, hindsight's 20/20, man. And I count my blessings. I've had some really good luck and made some really shrewd decisions in the hobby. Not to toot my own horn, but you know, kind of collecting the cards that I love and the best of the best types of players has treated me really well, and I've done pretty good on some prospecting gambles as well. So again, I don't let stuff like that really, I mean, God, that's a lot of money, man. It's life-changing money, right? That's a lot of tuition for all these kids that I got, right? Or I could upgrade back and to a 15-passenger van with hubcaps and even tinted windows and maybe deck it out inside with some wood floors. But, you know, it's one of those deals where, man, I've made money on cards. I've you know, missed opportunities to make money on cards. If you dwell on the negatives and stuff like that, man, this hobby is going to eat you up, man, because you're never going to guess the bottom. You're never going to guess the top. Part of the fun of the hobby and part of the fun of content creation from an investor perspective is talking about the top and the bottom and maybe, you know, ruminating on why we think the top is the top and the bottom is the bottom, or where a card's going to go in the future, or from based on where it's come from. But we don't know. None of us know. Anybody who out there speaks from a position of certainty is BSing you, right? Nobody knows what's going to happen in the future. We can make educated guesses based on past history, but even that is only a loose foundation for making prognostications of what's going to happen in the future, because a lot of things have changed in this hobby, even in the last 3 or 4 years. So many things have changed. So to answer your question, 801 card gems, probably the 86 Fleer Jordan that I missed the window on. That's the answer to that question. That's it, guys. That's all the questions and answers. I think it was about 15, 20 questions. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I love the engagement. Whenever I post a video on my channel, it's unique, man. You guys respond. You're thoughtful. You're full class. You're pure class from the beginning. I very rarely have to block people. I love getting your comments. It's one of the reasons I do this. This is my outlet to the world. So any of these questions that were posed to me, I'm posing them to you. I'd love to hear your answers to all these questions. If you disagree with something I said, let me know why, and you know, support it. I argue for a living. I'm an attorney. I went to law school, so I've been bred to argue with people, you know, politely and congenially. And so I'd ask the same of you. Comment anything you want about any of these questions. I'd love to hear from you, because every time I do one of these videos, I learn from the research that goes into it. We learn what Panini Instant is tonight. We learned what 2003 Topps Chrome Collection Parallel is. And maybe that's a card we need to go look at, because it is a very low pop card in comparison to the Topps paper base. It's very similar to the Topps first edition. So I don't know. I learn something every time I do one of these videos, and I learn even more when I read the comments from you guys, and I get questions like this from the people that do watch my channel. So appreciate all the people that ask the questions. Some really serious GOAT collectors in that list of question askers. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, reminder, follow me on Cajun Cardboard channel, the one you're watching right now, but don't forget to go subscribe right now after you finish this video to the Luka Nation Network, because I've got 4 videos coming up every single week on that channel as well. And stay tuned. I've got some really cool stuff coming up, including a content creators hobby mock draft that you guys are not going to want to miss, with 6 of the biggest hobby content creators out there. You're going to recognize every single person that's in this 6-team mock draft, yours truly included. And we're going to get votes about whose fantasy basketball team is the best. That is actually being filmed tonight. I'm not sure when it's going to release, but you don't want to miss that. So hit the bell icon for notifications. As always, I appreciate your time so much. Thanks for watching. Keep collecting, stay positive in the hobby, and peace.